Hey howdy hey everyone, it's me, Chuck Chumbucket, and welcome back to my new video. Now, a lot of people who know me know that I'm a huge movie nut. In fact, look at this. One of the first things you see when you walk into my room is this scratch-off chart that shows the 100 best films you could ever watch. Films include Spirited Away, Titanic, Forrest Gump, and Back to the Future. I mean, come on, how cool is that? So as you can tell, I love my movies. But what's always interested me about film? You know, that's actually kind of a hard question for me to answer. However, I'm pretty sure it has to do with the fact that I'm mesmerized by how the stories they tell often end up having a profound impact on me in such a short amount of time. And that's why I'm here to talk to you today. I'm here to share with you my top 10 favorite films and why they mean so much to me. Now, before I continue, guys, I just want to remind you that these are my favorite films. In my opinion, these are the films that I find most enjoyable.
Whoop-de-doo, sir.
Yeah, I know that sounds super obvious and unimportant, but you would be surprised to hear all of the aggression I get from people who hear an unpopular movie opinion from me.
Like what?
Well, for one, it might surprise a lot of people when they hear that The Godfather Part 1 and Part 2 are not even in my top 20 favorite films.
FBI, open up!
Number 10, Spaceballs. Now, just so you know, this is my favorite comedy of all time. This movie is so darn funny. I swear, there are zero jokes in this movie that miss. They are all funny. And don't even get me started with all the characters. They are all so unique and weird in their own special way that they are all super memorable. I can still name them all off the bat. Lone Star, Princess Vespa, Dot, Barf, President Scroob, and Yogurt. And don't even get me started with my favorite character, Dark Helmet. Oh my god, this guy is so arrogant and clumsy, it's hilarious. He's a great contrast to Darth Vader. Just look at this scene.
I order you, stop!
Oh my god, this movie is so underrated. Just check it out if you haven't already. It's a comedic masterpiece and definitely worth a watch. Number 9, The Return of the Jedi. Dun da 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 da. Oh my god, in the future, I definitely have to make a video about Star Wars and how much it's meant to me throughout my entire life. But Return of the Jedi is definitely my favorite movie in the whole Star Wars saga, which is saying a lot considering I love every movie in the whole franchise. And yes, that includes the prequels. And yes, that includes the I don't know about the sequels. And while I admit The Return of the Jedi is not a perfect movie, what with the annoying Ewoks or the beginning with Jabba the Hutt going on for a bit too long, I will say that the good in the movie by far and away outweighs the bad. For example, the action's simply spectacular. In fact, I think that the climax of this movie is the best space battle ever put to film. Also, the scene with Yoda is one of the most powerful scenes you'll ever see in a Star Wars movie. And then there's the actors. As usual, Harrison Ford gives the best performance of the movie as Han Solo. But another standout performance is Luke Skywalker by Mark Hamill, whose acting abilities have improved so much when compared to how they were in A New Hope.
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
So as you can probably tell, I think that this movie is one of the best films of all time and one of the best trilogies of all time. Number 8, Pulp Fiction. Normally I would summarize the movie, but this movie is very hard to summarize. The plot is very complicated and very convoluted in a good way, but it's very hard for me to even give a synopsis of what happened. So, yeah, I'm not even gonna try, actually. However, I will say this. The acting's good. Not just Bruce Willis did a good job, but John Travolta, Uma Thurman, Samuel L. Jackson. The screenplay's great. In fact, one of the best ever put to film, in my opinion. The editing's really good. You'll see what I mean if you watch the movie. And Quentin Tarantino does his usual masterful directing. It's kind of crazy how almost Every single one of his films is amazing, and you can tell he puts 110% of his effort into his projects. Yeah, a pattern you'll see on this list is that I don't have much praise I can say that hasn't been said about these movies before. Well, except Spaceballs.
More people need to watch that movie.
Number 7, Toy Story 3. Alright. I'm pretty sure that you guys are now calling me a baby just because I said that Toy Story 3 is one of my favorite movies. Yeah, I don't care. In fact, I think you're wrong and ignorant if you think that. And it doesn't seem like I'm alone in that opinion, with other film buffs still holding this film in high regard. Rotten Tomatoes still gives this movie a high score of a 98%, and the legend Quentin Tarantino even said that Toy Story 3 was his favorite film of 2010. And it makes sense why the film is held in such high regard. After years and years of audience members like me falling in love with the characters, it's nice to have a movie where basically all of the toys have prominent roles all throughout the movie. I also love how the film has a prison breakout element to it, which is great because I love prison breakout movies. But the main reason as to why I like this movie, especially when compared to the other 3 Toy Story movies, is because of the amount of heart and depth there is to it. Like, I really like the story element of Andy having to say goodbye to what is basically his childhood as he has to transition into adulthood. Which is something I can kind of relate to as I get older and have to start acting more like an adult each day. Oh god, I'm being too dramatic. Let's just move on. Number 6. Up. If you haven't seen this movie yet, you need to watch it just for the first 10 minutes alone. It's everything you've ever heard about and more. But in regards to the rest of the movie, it's also great. As crazy as it is, the writers over at Pixar somehow made a story about a man tying a bunch of balloons to his house and flying to South America work. They made that work. How?
Well, you got me. By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
What I love about this movie is that it brought me, and I assume a bunch of other people, on a huge roller coaster of emotions that showed us the importance of learning to let things go and how to make friends with others in a way that was both heartbreaking and heartwarming. I've come to love this movie so much that whenever someone asks me what does a perfect movie look like, this movie always comes to mind because I can't think of any flaws with it. I've honestly come to consider this one of those movies that people of all ages can enjoy. So if you haven't watched it, by all means, check it out. Number 5, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So I've been an Indiana Jones fan my entire life. In fact, here's a photo of me when I was younger when I dressed up as Indiana Jones for Halloween. However, I do not want you to think like I love this movie solely out of nostalgia. In fact, I consider this movie to be the gold standard of what an action movie should be. One thing I love about this movie is the action scenes, the motorcycle chase, the airplane chase, the tank chase, and the 3 paths Indiana Jones must take at the climax. I mean, these are all amazing examples of what action scenes should be like in a movie. The reason these action scenes are so great is because the music is great, the stakes are high, the set pieces are amazing, and we actually care about what happens to the characters. Because the movie took time to develop the characters and make them seem like people, it allows me, the viewer, to become invested in the action scenes and actually be afraid about what might happen to the characters. But by far and away, what I love most about this movie is Harrison Ford and Sean Connery. And honestly, the chemistry between these 2 actors is what really sells the movie for me. Their portrayal of a father and son is so realistic that it even reminded me of my relationship with my father, in a good way. So maybe if you watch the movie, you can find a positive connection as well. So I hope my little crash course review was enough to convince you that this is a good movie and that you should watch it. And if you disagree with me, well, then I'd slap you.
That's for blasphemy.
Number 4, Good Will Hunting. You know, I don't really know why I like this movie, but I'm pretty sure it has to do with the fact that I love rags to riches stories. I'm also a huge sucker for happy endings and even bittersweet endings. I guess the main reason as to why I like this movie is because this movie, along with number 2 on my list, are the ultimate feel-good movies. And by that I mean that whenever I start watching this movie, I'll feel good by the end of it because I just love seeing good things happen to good people.
Just tell him, sorry. I had to go see about a girl. Well. son of a stole my line.
And if I can find happiness every time I watch this movie, I'm pretty sure you can too if you give it a go. Number 3, Taxi Driver. Man, if I ever learn what I think is the saxophone, I have to learn that song because it is simply amazing. Speaking of amazing, the more and more I think about it, the more and more I'm surprised that Martin Scorsese keeps pumping out amazing films. And Taxi Driver, I definitely think is his best movie. Just like how I think the ending to this movie is the best part of the film. The ending is like, oh my god. You know that feeling when you watch Joker where you were like, oh my god, what did I just watch? Yeah, that's what you feel after the ending because it is gruesome and it is brutal. But it's totally worth the watch. And don't even get me started with all of the main characters and actors. They all do an excellent job. As a matter of fact, the main character, Travis Bickle, played by the legend Robert De Niro, is one of my favorite characters of all time. Why? Because this twisted weirdo is super interesting and you're never sure what he's gonna do next. And Jodie Foster's performance is also commendable. She does a great job playing a sex worker when she was only a teenager. But now you're probably asking, okay Chuck, we understand that there's a lot of good stuff about this film, but why do you like it so much that it's your 3rd favorite film of all time? And to that I say, I don't know. You know, I actually thought about my answer to this question for a long time, but I simply can't come up with a response. I guess I like this movie just cuz. But who knows, maybe if you check it out, you will too.
You talking to me?
Yes, I'm talking to you. Rude. Number 2, The Shawshank Redemption. Now, objectively speaking, this movie is probably the best movie on this list. However, because of my personal experiences, it's not number 1. And you'll see what I mean once we get to the first place. However, do not let that dissuade you from the fact that this is an amazing movie. It's beautiful, heartwarming, and even awe-inspiring if we're going crazy. Alright, so I know I have 0 things to say about this movie that haven't been said before, but f*** it. I don't care. I'm gonna praise whatever I want to praise anyway. Everything about this movie is great. Everything. The directing, the acting, the screenplay, the cinematography, the editing, the music. Everything's good. Oh my god. But let me tell you why I personally love this movie and how it stands out to me. If you remember, earlier I said that this movie and Good Will Hunting are my favorite feel-good movies. And that's because I just love seeing good things happen to good people, or at least good characters. But whereas Good Will Hunting has a bittersweet ending, Shawshank Redemption, on the other hand, has a flat-out happy ending, where the bad guys get what they deserve and the good guys get to live happily ever after. So I'm gonna tell you guys the same exact thing I told to my sophomore year English teacher when he asked me why I love this film. People go to the movies to be entertained. So after 2.5 hours of falling in love with these characters as they go through horrible pain, both physical and mental, it's very satisfying to see something good finally happen to them. Especially when it's at the end of the movie, so that way audience members like you or me can leave the theater on a high note. So yeah, that's numbers 10 through 2 on my list, and before we get on to number 1, here are a few honorable mentions.
Get off my plane.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Hasta la vista, baby.
What the hell is your delay, Captain? You're supposed to begin that assault 10 minutes ago.
We're waiting, sir.
Waiting for what?
Private Doss to finish praying for us, sir.
Private Doss is praying. Who the hell is Private Doss?
Where are they?
Killing is making a choice.
Where are they?
Choose between one life or the other. Your friend, the district attorney, or his blushing bride to be.
Number 1. Titanic. Now, I know for sure that this is an unpopular opinion because I basically picked a chick flick rom-com, well, tragcom as my number 1 favorite movie of all time, but I don't care. Fight me. This movie's a masterpiece. Leave me alone. Now, I admit that this movie's not perfect. For example, I think the runtime's a bit too long. I personally would have trimmed the movie down a little bit. But believe me when I say that the good in this movie, by far and away, outweighs the bad. In fact, why don't I give you guys a brief summary of all of the good in this movie? When praising this movie, people usually put their attention onto the stars in front of the camera. And while I do think the actors did a great job, I also want to put some attention onto the stars behind the camera because, oh my gosh, they did amazing. I am astounded by the production value of this movie. The set design is great. The costume design is great. The special effects design is great. Nothing about this movie looks cheap. And don't even get me started with the soundtrack. Oh my god, I definitely consider it to be a masterpiece. And I'm not just talking about the song by Celine Dion. I'm especially talking about the score by James Horner. Because, oh my god, it's amazing. And honestly, what I consider to be the best soundtrack ever put to film. And of course, I can't praise this movie without mentioning James Cameron. I read on IMDb that he was the director, the producer, the writer, the editor. Heck, he might have been the iceberg for all I know. But while I do think the script could have used a little bit of work, I still need people to realize that he pulled a home run on every single one of these fronts and deserves a lot more praise for the masterpiece he made. However, I would like you guys to know what this movie means for me on a personal basis. So, when I was younger, I had this huge Titanic phase where literally Titanic was my whole life. Which is why part of the reason as to why I like this movie, but not all, is because it reminds me of a simpler time in my life where literally my whole life was Titanic and that was the only thing that mattered to me. So that's just the tip of the iceberg on why I love this movie. But don't worry, in the future, I'm definitely going to be making a video on why I love this movie and why I consider it to be a masterpiece. So that's the end of the video, but before I go, I kinda have to remind you guys that, well, opinions change and it's likely that the rankings and placements on this list won't last indefinitely. But don't worry, in the future, I definitely plan on making a re-upload of this video where I will show you my updated favorite films list. But hey, that's it for now. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I shall see you guys later.